Sing Goddess, The Wrath of the Fonz, Smoke Pit Fairy Tales Part 2, Chapter 18, Sing Goddess, The Wrath of the Fonz. The battalion commander gave Fonzie his position back as platoon sergeant. First platoon only had 20 Marines. Eclair and I made it an unofficial 22. Fonzie was looking over the new Marines, learning the new guys' names and telling them what he'd expect out of them. What do you think he said to Amemnon? I asked Doc.
No fucking clue.
You think he apologized?
I don't think so. I think he just told the colonel that he needs as many people fighting as he can get, and he knows the Fonzie's a good leader.
That night, Fox Company huddled behind the bridge. Other companies hid behind their own structures. Other battalions, I'm sure, prepared for whatever they were going to assault. An hour before dusk, F-18s soared over the city, fought with MiGs, and dropped an ungodly amount of firepower on the opposite side of the river. Daedaluses left their black trails and razed the first 100 yards after the river. One Daedalus positioned himself over the bridge, and Lieutenant Toshi led Fox Company's charge across. Ivan sent his troops to meet us. Steel rained on us from the city, but at least the actual rain had stopped. First platoon turned left after the bridge, the Fonz in the lead. Lieutenant Wilkinson was still a sheep. Fonzie's rage escaped him.
Come on, you pussies!
He screamed at the Russians. He ran down the street. The platoon struggled to keep up with him. Fonzie stopped at a blown-out intersection and barked at the squad leaders where to put the Marines. Ivan opened up on us. The Marines hit the deck. Fonzie stood in the road, fearlessly firing back at them. Unlike the other platoon sergeant and squad leaders, Fonzie returned to his roots and carried his M240. Our backs were now to the river. Fonzie's terrible war cry shook the air. God damn it, Doc, how many fucking people does Russia have to throw at us?
I don't know, man, but we can only be so lucky. We're definitely getting stabbed this time.
Instead of a human wave that washed down the streets, the Russians rose out of the rubble around us. There were just as many of them as there had always been. Fonzie let out a burst and cracked a soldier's face in half.
Take that, fuck bitch!
He opened fire on Ivan and charged towards them. He was possessed by the demons of rage. He sawed off another soldier's head with bullets. When his friends tried to carry him off, Fonzie cut them open. The platoon didn't have deliberate orders, so we took our time to aim and shoot the soldiers around Fonzie. One of them turned to run and was shot in the back. His guts spilt into the dirt. Writhing and screaming on the ground, one hand gripped the earth. The other tried to shove his guts back inside of his belly. Fonzie let a burst of rounds escape into the wailing Russian's guts. He was still crying when Fonzie walked away from him. Fonzie turned his head back to us.
Come on!
The platoon got up and ran after the Fonz. We charged the Russians. Fonzie held his weapon at the hip and fired madly into the ranks. When he reached their position, he held his gun by the barrel and clubbed the soldier's head sideways. He raised the weapon to strike again, but an explosion rocked the earth from a Russian neck. Fonzie flailed and dropped the gun. Fonzie screamed and grabbed his K-bar and stabbed the Russian in the throat. He stabbed another in the liver and twisted the blade around his torso, bathing Fonzie in blood. He grabbed another soldier's hand and ran his dagger through his elbow, severing the arm under it. Fonzie beat the armless soldier to death with his own limb. The rest of 1st Platoon fought the enemy, but nowhere near as ferociously as the Fonz. He went on, devouring the enemy, burning a valley through the mountains of Russia. The platoon trailed behind him. The fog of war thickened. Smoke grenades, fire, and flame turned the sky dark. We found ourselves out of Russians in front of us to kill.
Where the fuck are they?
We scanned around the blood-soaked rubble and shells. Eclair pointed.
They're behind us!
What?
Fonzie swung around. He had somehow pushed through the Russian line. Ivan was between the river and us. Fonzie leveled his machine gun and fired into the Russian ranks.
Contact rear!
1st Platoon moved online with Fonzie. We charged them and started beating them with our weapons. Some of the Russians jumped into the river in an effort to escape. Fonzie ran through who stood and fought, and opened his machine gun up on the Russians in the water. Most of them were already hung up and bleeding on the barbed wire that laid under the waves. The river started to turn purple, then red. Fonzie fired until his arms were sore from lugging the heavy weapon. Fonzie dropped the 240 and pulled out his pistol and K-bar. When he turned to face us, there was a soldier behind him. Fonzie shoved his pistol in the man's mouth. The soldier dropped his rifle and trembled. The soldier, on his knees, hugged Fonzie's legs, begging for mercy.
No one escapes the death God put in my hands. Not one of you Russian fucks!
Fonzie's pistol was still in the man's mouth when he stabbed him in the throat. The soldier fell. Blood burst from his wound and soaked the shattered concrete. Fonzie grabbed the man by the legs and hurled him into the river.
Fish food!
Another soldier rushed Fonzie, firing. Fonzie shot back. Both of them missed each other. When the soldier reached Fonzie, the Fonz drove his shoulder into the man's chest and his K-bar into his gut. Fonzie grabbed his falling intestines and yanked them out. The soldier screamed in pain, and Fonzie kicked him into the river. Fonzie kept up with the slaughter. The rest of us beat, shot, and stabbed the remaining enemy. When there was no one left to kill, we threw the bodies into the river. They piled up, caught by the barbed wire underneath. One side of the stream was almost clear cobalt. The only exception was from a downed Russian mech 50 yards upstream, leaking a brown and green stream of fuel into the water. The other side of the human dam was scarlet. The red water washed away, exposing the bed. The Russian corpses dammed the river. I lit a cigarette in the respite of chaos and stared at the mangled flesh. That's not the most fucked up thing I've ever seen.
What was?
Right now, I don't know. But I'm sure there was something else. I offered the Fonz a cigarette.
Yo, Hank.
Eclair called from behind. "Sup, bro?" Eclair lifted his arm. His camera was broken. The lens was shattered and the body was cracked. I raised an eyebrow. "What happened to that?"
I was out of ammo and Ivan punched me in the face.
"Yeah, you got a shiner."
When the guy hit me, I dropped my knife. This was the only thing I had to beat him with.
"You beat a guy to death with your camera?" Eclair smiled.
Yeah.
"Well, when we get home, remind me to write you up for a NAM."
Ha! That's funny. We ain't ever going home.
All right, let's get moving. We got a long night in front of us.
Fonzie flicked his cigarette into the dam. The fuel from the mech upstream ignited and the bodies burned in the water, covering them again. First platoon followed Fonzie back to the jaws of death and hell. We were at the walls of Ilium when the sun rose over the horizon. Ivan was putting up a fierce fight at the gates. Doc, Eclair, and I followed the Fonz in front of the platoon through what was left of the alleyways towards Ilium. A story or two of walls lined our path. Second and third platoon had a group of Russian soldiers pinned down, and we were going to flank them. The Russians had a knight behind them, firing at the Marines. The Cat platoon hadn't any trucks left. They were firing their few remaining missiles at the mech. Fonzie spotted Ivan and halted us. We spread through the rubble, being careful not to make too much noise, and laid down. We aimed in on the Russians that had been giving the rest of the company such a hard time. Fonzie opened fire. They dove for cover and shot back. "Contact rear!" a Marine screamed. I looked behind me, and another squad of Russians had snuck up behind us. The Marines fired in all directions. A Daedalus screamed from the sky, its exhaust leaving its signature black stream. Without slowing down, it changed from an eagle into a giant silver god and rammed into the night by the Russians. The Daedalus's chest read, "Get some."
Oh, fuck no.
Fucking right. Fonzie was still looking at the soldiers we were to flank.
No. That fuck Hector is down there.
What? I shot my head around, taking my eyes off the enemy around me and looking up to the front. Oh shit, yep, that's him. Hector was down with the troops firing. I thought he wasn't an infantry guy.
I don't give a good goddamn what he is.
Fonzie said as he bolted into the mess of soldiers below. I turned around to look for Doc. Instead of my friend, I saw an AK's buttstock flying towards my face. I bent my head down and the rifle slammed into my Kevlar. I felt a sharp crack in my neck and fell to the ground. The Russian's momentum had carried him over me. I drew my pistol and shot him in the thigh. He wailed and stumbled to the ground. I put another bullet in his face. Doc was busy with another soldier exchanging blows. Eclair and I pulled the soldier off of him and Doc hacked his throat with his tomahawk. "Hey, come on, Fonzie just saw Hector. He's chasing him down."
What? Who's Hector?
"No time, let's go." We ran away from the platoon after Fonzie. My neck ached and the world was spinning, but I ran towards the enemy. When the rest of the company saw the four of us charging the Russians, they followed suit, and soon there were two companies, one American and one Russian, fist fighting over broken bricks. Get Some ripped the cockpit hatch off the Knight and threw it to the ground. The Knight jerked back, but the Daedalus had its arm in its grip. Get Some pulled the Knight in. The Knight twisted it, exposing the pilot to the fighting men below. The Knight's front side was peppered and dinged by the Marines. A river of blood flowed down from the cockpit, and the Knight stood still. Hector saw the Fonz charging him. There was fear in his eyes. Fonzie fired a few rounds at Hector but missed. Hector drew a bead on Fonzie and shot. The bullet hit Fonzie's flak jacket. The force of impact knocked the Fonz down, but he rolled to his feet without losing momentum and jumped at Hector like an eagle dives for fish. Fonzie's K-bar met Hector's neck. The Russian fell to the ground, gasping for life.
"Let soldiers carry me away. I do not want body rotting in street."
Fonzie stood over Hector with a burning hate.
I'm gonna feed you to the fucking stray dogs.
The life escaped Hector's eyes and his body went limp. Fonzie spit in Hector's face.
Fucking bitch.
The Daedalus walked through the combat, being careful not to crush the Marines. The Russians retreated into the gates of Ilium. The mech had a long coil of barbed wire dragging around its foot. Fonzie took his K-bar and cut holes between the tendon and bones of Hector's ankles. When the machine dragging the wire passed him, Fonzie grabbed the wire and ran it through the cuts in Hector's legs. The Daedalus marched on, dragging the still, bleeding, lifeless body. The fighting stopped. Ivan didn't have anything left to throw at us. The sound of battle rattled lightly in the distance, but for us, it was silence. After an hour of sitting there, staring at Ilium's walls, I hunkered down behind half of a wall with a handful of other Marines. Well, what the fuck do we do now? Eclair shrugged.
I don't know. You've been in there. You know your way around, right?
Lieutenant Toshi handed his radio back to Correa.
The 88th is on the other side of the complex, and the Germans and Brits are to the south. Ivan doesn't have a foot in St. Petersburg anymore.
Oh, he's out there. He's lying face down in a puddle of his own blood, waiting in Purgatory's DMV line with his ticket to hell.
So is the city ours then?
Correa asked.
We have our back to the ocean. Ivan's not coming from the east. If the army, Brits, and Germans can keep the Russians from marching back in, then we won't have too terrible of a time.
What about the fortress?
That's the only problem. Intel says Ilium can self-sustain itself for a good year without resupply or reinforcement, and the Pentagon won't let us just level the fucking place because it's a mech factory, and they want to know how their shit is built.
Sir, if we do somehow get inside there, won't the Russians burn or destroy everything that could be of value to us?
Sergeant, we're talking about the United States government. Please refrain from applying any sort of common sense to their problem solving.
We all chuckled a little bit at that.
But think about how long and hard it was to take this city. We have a long, hard war in front of us. We've been here for months, in the largest, debatably most powerful nation on the planet. A third of the Marine Corps is here. A good chunk of our army, and our allies are too. And we've kind of taken a city.
Everyone's face was grim. I lit a cigarette. Eclair and Doc followed suit. St. Petersburg was beautiful when we got there. Now, it was an ashtray of death overflowing with brass, blood, and dirt, reeking of Satan's fingertips. The bodies were a testament of the will of nations to send people they don't know to fight and die for ideas they themselves don't believe in. The mechs that laid hunched over or caved into fallen towers of brick, concrete, and steel were like lesser gods strangled by Zeus, cast from heaven. I stared at the night that stood in front of us. Its pilot's blood stained the front. The mech's engine still hummed and its eye still glowed bright red. Hey, Lieutenant Toshi, sir? I said, thinking about Ilium and the mech.
What up, combat camera?
What if we, hide some Marines in the mech's cargo bay? You know, if it has one. Then put it on autopilot and just have it walk home.
What are you talking about?
Well, when we get inside, the Marines could pop out, disable whatever defense systems we needed to, and let the division right in through the front gates. Toshi thought long and hard about my idea.
I guess it couldn't hurt to try, but who would go?
I've been in there. So is Silence-Worth, Doc Evans, and De La Garza.
Do you think you'd remember enough about the layout to get where you need to be?
Not at all. But it's better than sitting out here with our thumbs up our ass in front of a fortress we're not allowed to level.
Hell, all we really need to do is get the gates open. Toshi flung up a hand.
Well, fuck it. I'll go talk to the S2, if any of them are still alive, and get you any intel I can. I'm gonna tell the BC about the plan.
Toshi looked up at the mech.
How long do you think that thing stays running for?
No clue, sir.
Well, if we take too much more time, then Ivan will be suspicious about it walking up. You guys eat, smoke, get ammo, and whatever else you need. Let's shoot for loading Palacios, Allensworth, Evans, and De La Garza up in about a half an hour.
Aye, sir. Eclair patted my shoulder.
Good luck, brother.
Won't be the worst thing I've been through.
Yeah.
Hey, Eclair. I lit a cigarette. You got any face paint left?
Do I get Cheetos on me? I shouldn't have Cheetos on me. Anyway, hey guys, thanks for listening to another episode of Sing Goddess Wrath, the Fonz Smoke Pit Fairy Tales Part 2. We're good and in the meat of it now, aren't we? We've only got a few chapters of this one left. And again, if, you don't want to wait for me to read all these to you, you can't just go get the books or get the war chest, huh? You guys know what the war chest is by now, right? I don't have to nail you in the head with it, but, hey, we're putting some more dots on the map. Friggin', I think, Mississippi and Connecticut were two states that I didn't have on there before, and they're going now. I put a dot on this map for every war chest that gets sold. And there's actually 2 war chests now, aren't there? We got, the war chest, which has the first 6 books of this series in it. And then the war chest Mark II that's got the last 6. And then there's the war crate that's got them all. But anyway, that's where we're at now. And then, of course, if you want to follow me on Patreon, I think we're in... I just uploaded chapter 5 of book 3 over on Patreon. So we're chugging ahead over there. Getting away with a few more things. That, and there are some things that I do have to edit to put on YouTube, because it violates all the community standard stuff, which I think a lot of the first third book's gonna do. But over on Patreon, it's unedited, as will it be, when it's an audiobook, like on Audible or whatever. But yeah, anyway, we're gearing towards the end of this book. That's exciting. But anyway, I would like to thank everyone that is following me over on Patreon. I'd also like to thank everyone who's gotten a war chest. And I'd like to thank everyone that's watching this right now. Also, I was uploading on Spotify for a while. I'm not doing that anymore. They're starting to do some shisty stuff over there. And yeah, you know what? I'm good. So if you're wondering what was going on with the Spotify thing, there's your answer. I'm not going to dig too deep dive into it, but let's just say they got some weird licensing shit going on where they're setting it up to be able to appropriate people's shit that's already on there. And like some people are freaking out thinking it's going to be about making unauthorized sequels or like fucking, I don't know, fan fictions or that kind of thing. I don't think it's going to be that deep. I think it's more like they're setting themselves up for being able to remix parts of it and let people use it in music or something. Or maybe even just advertisements. And I'm not sure if it's retroactive or not. I can't imagine that it would be. But there's also only 5 people that listen over there on Spotify anyway. So fuck it. Anyway, thank you for being here, YouTube people. You're the bread and butter. All right, I will catch y'all around on the flip side. And we're almost to 500 followers again. So that's cool. Because this got nuked halfway through the first book the first time. Let's see if we don't do that again this time. I think on the first channel we were just under 1,000 followers, subscribers, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, better luck this time, I guess. All right, I will be reading to you next week. All right, thanks for sticking around. Here's your bloopers. Ciao.
Microphone testing the microphone. It is the year of our Lord Jesus Christ, 2023, December 23rd. All right, let's get into it. We're almost done, man. Fucking chapter 18, man. Fuck.
Chapter 18.
Trip. Ask is a word. You can say ask. See, you're just saying ask, not asked. Axed. I'm from the South. Fuck off.
I like how Doc says, I have no clue what he told him. I have no idea. No conceivable notion. And then just gives a pretty good idea.
Stop biting your fucking lip, Trip. Biting my cheek when I talk. I don't know what's going on.
Fucking A. I told myself I was going to record all 3 of these chapters today. But chapter 18... Fonz is fucking pissed off and yelling the whole time. I might not have a voice until next week. We about to fucking find out. Fuck it. Yeah, I'm talking in character. If I don't, I'll lose it. Fuck you.
Well, what the fuck? Yeah. Different throat noise I gotta make now. I gotta stop being all this and, get back to being Hank.
How do you snort a laugh and then say, yeah? Yeah.